Hello, my name is Kendall. This is my video report number 1 for digital media and public responsibilities. We were given the task to research a social issue and how social media has brought forward this issue to the public's attention. The topic that I have selected to research on is New Zealand's counter to the global pandemic outbreak. The reason why I have chosen to research this topic is because I have personally experienced firsthand the impact that the sudden enforcements the government had put down in dealing with COVID. A few questions I pose to answer are: has the process of decreasing COVID cases impacted positively or negatively on the citizens of New Zealand? Are social media platforms giving the people of New Zealand too much freedom to stir up a problem? Firstly, as many already know, New Zealand was and still is receiving praise for its successful elimination, or say reduction, of COVID transmission and rapid increase in the community. It definitely shines a light on the almost unknown country that part of the world didn't know about, thanks to the worldwide news and, of course, social media platforms. The media has been a resourceful source for many people around the world, as people religiously check their phones, tablets, watches, etc. to see the latest news or popular subject that is currently happening. For example, my first hearing of COVID was through Facebook, and the first case in New York City was through Snapchat. Not long after finding out through Facebook Messenger about New Zealand's first COVID case as well. In today's generation, social media is definitely a reliable source for people to know what's happening around. While this is true, social media platforms and worldwide news had portrayed the positive side of New Zealand's accomplishment. However, from the point of view of citizens of New Zealand, outsiders weren't able to see both the positive and negative impacts the government and protocols had on the citizens themselves. A few protocols. On March 14th, Jacinda Ardern, who was the Prime Minister of New Zealand, announced that effective by 1 a.m. on March 16th, all travellers arriving in or returning to New Zealand from outside of the country must self-isolate for 14 days. This applies to all travellers, even New Zealand citizens. An outrageous case was when a person knew they had tested positive, went against required 14-day quarantine, and travelled to about 3 places with her family. This obviously created a huge outburst on the internet. Using the media, people asked, who are these idiots? What were they thinking? When people found out who these people were, there were threats and heavy cursing towards the family for thinking of doing something so ridiculous. On March 19th, the government required the cancellation of indoors gatherings of more than 100 people. This did not apply to workplaces, schools, supermarkets, or public transports, obviously, as they were essential places for people to visit. Jacinda Ardern announced the closure of New Zealand's borders to all but New Zealand citizens and residents. That one was important, but carry on. These protocols were impacted. This protocol specifically was impacted worse on the Māori citizens of New Zealand, since many of their whānau family members were struck by the sickness and few dying from it as well. They could not mourn correctly for their lost loved ones. This was something that had reached to the government pretty quickly, as Māori citizens are known for their cultural beliefs and traditions. Of course, being a Māori myself, I thought this was quite rubbish, even though I felt as much pain as what they were going through as well. The media began targeting Māori people as well, cursing them out and saying we go through the same problem as well. On March 25th, 2020, Jacinda Ardern had moved the whole of New Zealand to level 4 alert, where all schools, non-essential businesses, sports events, traditional events, etc. were put on hold for up to 6 weeks. Many residents were complaining about how they will be able to pay off bills or continue their businesses. How would elderly or unable people be able to retrieve essential items that they need? Services in New Zealand voluntarily offered to transport essential needs to people who are unable to retrieve on their own. The government would invest $56.4 million in funding to aid Māori communities and businesses affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And on March 24th, the COVID-19 response legislation bill, which allows local authorities to meet remotely, the government to take over schools, and prevents no-cause evictions and freezes rents for 6 months. The same day, the finance minister announced that the government was negotiating with banks to ensure that nobody would lose their homes as a result of defaulting on mortgage payments during the pandemic. This was a huge relief for many people of New Zealand, as well as my own family as well, as many people struggled to pay off mortgages or even pay off rent, as most of my community did not have a well-off job. These are only few of the many positive and negatives I had come across while living through the lockdown. For my next video, I wanted to compare two places and the process of dealing with the pandemic. Was it helpful to the citizens? Was it helpful to the citizens of that area? And the two places I wish to compare are New Zealand and New York City, as I have lived in both places. Thank you.